Hi there, it's Philip Heitzen here, the founder of Art of Procurement. If you're a regular listener, you'll have no doubt noticed that we've been adding new types of shows into the Art of Procurement podcast feed. Our goal is to share stories and insights with you from across the world of procurement, using a variety of formats and increasingly bringing in additional voices and hosts. So let me introduce you to our newest host and show. Katherine is a rising star in the procurement industry and the original host of another podcast that we produce called The Sourcing Hero. Katherine has created a new show. It's called Procurement for the People, where Katherine's on a quest to learn more about the nuances that drive stronger procurement performance. We're going to publish this podcast on the first Tuesday of every month, with this month being the exception. Okay then, let me go straight into the show. I'm going to roll the tape. I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the very first episode of Procurement for the People. I'm your host, Katherine, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. These conversations are meant for all people, those within the industry and the stakeholders working with procurement on big goals for their business. I'm hoping to bridge the gaps between procurement and the stakeholders to give you actionable advice from industry experts. That's actually, the goal will be to elevate your role in the bigger picture. Today, I'm talking to Daniel Barnes, contract management extraordinaire and founder of World of Procurement, which actually began as a blog and has expanded to so much more, including a Discord community. More on that later. Let's jump right in. Daniel Barnes, welcome to the very first episode of Procurement for the People.
So I'm number one as well, which is cool. If that's the case, I don't know if that's how it's going to transpire, right? But that's cool.
You're number one, and I think it makes sense because you have such a clear view on procurement community and really understand the value of an inclusive approach to procurement.
Yeah, that's I think the whole, and we can delve as deep as we want to on this whole inclusivity perspective on procurement, but I think it's just lost on so many procurement professionals just in their day jobs. And then when you think about communities out there, well, communities should be very much all inclusive. That's my view anyway. And maybe I have a slight Web 3.0 view on that, which is a very inclusive community at the heart of everything. That's my view, and I'm happy to go as deep as we want to.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into it. And, I have to state that the mission of this podcast is to kind of break down barriers for people that are outside of procurement and for the people within procurement to give them the tools and resource to have better relationships with people outside of procurement, right? Because we've been hearing it all year, but specifically concentration in the second half of this year that procurement has to rise up, and engagement with stakeholders is going to be the key to success next year, because there's so much more that procurement can provide to other areas of the business that, probably wasn't happening already. And providing conversations and actionable advice on how to step up is, I think, crucial. And I'm such a fan of the people of procurement and supply chain, everybody in supply management. And that's why I'm here. I don't have a procurement background. I've been working on the marketing side of procurement for a few years now, and it feels like home to me. And I just want to share it with everyone. And I think that everyone in the business should have a better understanding of the value that procurement's bringing to growth and everything.
It's I completely agree. And I always talk about alignment to the business and making sure that we, as procurement or supply chain people, whatever you want to sort of bundle us into, whichever umbrella of terms we use here, that we are very much there to work for the business, to achieve goals. And I think, I don't know, I just find that so many procurement teams go about it in such a bad way that there's a bit of ego within their roles. Like they know best, that they know which suppliers they should go with. There's a little bit of a them and us attitude. And I don't think this is everywhere, right? And you have to be careful with, when we make
Sure.
statements like this. But I will probably make some polarizing statements. But predominantly, I've covered a lot of different sectors, industries, a lot of different size companies, and the same challenges everywhere. No one really gets what procurement does. They are misinformed as to what the procurement team does, or whatever that team is called, and it often leads to them thinking they're just there to process purchase orders. They're there to save on costs. They're not really there to do anything else. And I think if you're in a business like that, then the number one problem you've got is a communication problem. And this is why I think this podcast is great, the whole premise of it, because this is so easy to rectify. This is so easy to get right. In that if you share your vision of procurement with your business, which should align to what the business wants to achieve, then you're already on the same side. But if you're trying to do things that the business doesn't get value from long term or even short term, I just don't see why people are going to want to use procurement. And that's when that whole circumvention comes in, where teams will do anything not to work with procurement, as they will find any way to get around it.
And I've been there, as someone in marketing, I've experienced myself the speed bumps, you can call it, that procurement can create when trying to seal a deal on either software or services. And the reality is that both sides see themselves as the expert in buying, right? And so there needs to be education on both sides. And when it comes down to it, we're people. Procurement is a buyer, and essentially the consumer for the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that realizing that people in procurement are people first, and people on the sell side are also people, and we are in a buyer and seller market, just as we are personally buyers and consumers. Mm-hmm. And so the mindset really needs to shift, I think, on both sides. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And everything I was just saying was more from that internal stakeholder, that internal picture. But you're right. Like on the other side, there are the sales teams, the bid teams, and all of those. And I don't know. I just often find that procurement teams treat the people they're trying to get the services from awfully. They're not clear on communications about what they're wanting. Like people build really bad RFPs for one. They don't communicate it properly to them. They give them no time to actually do it, or they ask them to do so much as part of bid responses or submissions that it can just mean that the team bidding in for your work, or those sales teams are just so stretched and can't really show you the value that they can give. And then if we talk about sort of what happens once you've actually got a contract signed, once you've done the whole procurement, how do you manage a long-term relationship with your suppliers? Well, treating them like humans is a very
that's
good
a good first start.
I think we can get into the mindset that we have to we must treat our suppliers like a punch bag, that we can keep pushing and pushing throughout the life of the contract on renewals and things like that. And I think we're moving away from that as a viable means of doing procurement. I think it's very much turned into a relationship-led profession here, both internally and externally, whereas previously, or more traditionally, I would say, it's been very much about cost reduction, cost realization, just whatever, anything related to you getting a better price.
And we could go off on so many tangents there, because now that the priorities, at least at an enterprise level for procurement organizations, has shifted and the skill set has shifted,
Yeah.
procurement has to figure out how to, and we started out by saying we have to rise up and step up and give them the right tools. And I think one of the greatest tools out there right now is your Discord community. Tell me,
Nice plug. Thanks for
yeah,
that.
I mean, seriously. So I'm doing this podcast because I want to open up the lines of communication. You've got your community, and guess what? Within the first few minutes of being logged in, it was a flood of communication. And I'm going to let you tell everybody about it, but it
Sure.
it it has really inspired me to do more with this podcast.
Yeah, like yeah, so the community aspect and what I should meet. I'm trying to find a very easy way to explain it, but I guess I set up my own podcast, and you get followers and things like that. But actually, at the heart of all of that is a community of people that are like your. I try to avoid the word followers, right? Because
Right.
that's the wrong terminology. But you almost want them to be community members, people who have a say in what you do,
Mm-hmm.
want to share knowledge, they want to communicate, they want to share their ideas, and make a hub for it. And like, there's a bunch of communities out there in the procurement space, and for me, like they're all very good, right? They all do amazing things. The one thing I noticed, and I was experimenting with it about a year ago now, was Discord as a place to go and share amazing ideas. And I've been following Discord as a company. I've been using it as a consumer for years and years. And it just made sense, because the whole point of this Discord server is you can come into the World of Procurement community. That's, if we're going to keep it as that name, the community can decide on that for sure. Like,
Yeah.
that's my idea there. Like, you can come in as you want. You can be your real self. You can be your virtual self. You can come in, share anything you want, talk about anything you want, procurement or non-procurement, right? Like, this can be a place just to find connection and friendships and ideas, just about anything. But then when we want to talk about procurement and share really cool ideas in that space, it's open to anyone. So whether you're buy side, sell side, whether you've never interacted with procurement and you just want to come in and learn a little bit about procurement professionals or how to buy stuff, like that's kind of the vision. And I guess I was originally reserving it to a launch in 2022, and that's kind of like still my idea. Like, I'm not really pushing it too much. I'm not trying to scream at everyone and pull
Sure.
people in from everywhere. And I just wanted to test it. Like, is this a viable place to make a community? And I think, like, the evidence is yes. I think it's going to be a lot of hard work. It requires a lot of ticking over, a lot of interactions. But wait, that's kind of what a community is there for. But I wanted to make a community that isn't reliant on myself. So, like, the podcast, and you're like, you know this, like, when you make content and you're the host or you're the content creator, it's all about you. And if you don't produce the content, it will dwindle away. And I've been really inconsistent all year with my podcast and content because it takes so much time. But with a community, it's not about one person, it's about everyone. And I like that idea very much so. So yeah, I'll kind of leave it at that for now, but happy to go deeper for sure.
Yeah, and what I love about the community that you've built for, as it stands right now, world of procurement, is that it's user led. Those conversations are, generated by the people that have questions or that want to share expertise or that find a great link, a great article, a great video, a great podcast to listen to. I check in just so I can see what other people are interested in. And I check in to ask questions. So I'm on the marketing side. So I'm always trying to understand the psychology. I'm always trying to understand what's important to certain aspects of sourcing because I work for a sourcing software company. And
yeah.
And I want to be able to serve this group better, right? So if I know what they care about and I know what their challenges are, then I'm going to be able to give them a better product. And I think that's where maybe some other procurement communities fall short is the separation of church and state, right? The separation of buyers and sellers, when really if we can break down that barrier like you're doing with your Discord community, I think we can only accelerate businesses.
Yeah, like no, it's a really interesting point. And originally I was thinking about, like, do we do a closed community, right? Like, is it just about procurement people, or just about supply chain people, or just do I make one that's just for contract management people, which is kind of more my everyday life now. And I was like, no, that's stupid, because when I think about supply chain, we all sit under supply chain in some way. We make that supply chain function from start to finish. And who's part of that? Well, we've got suppliers as part of that. So why would we not have suppliers? And I'm also really interested, just from a nerdy perspective, right? For a lot of these tech providers, like, there's so many cool tech innovations from suppliers
I'm
out there.
obsessed.
It's crazy. Like, it's the kind of stuff, when I got into this, like, I've only been doing this 6 years now, I think, just 6 and a bit years in sort of procurement, supply chain, commercial, whatever we call it. And, at the start, I was using really bad Oracle stuff, or SAP, or both, I think. And the tech was awful. And I was like, do you know what? I think I'm going to quit this. I don't want to do this anymore. This is the worst job I've ever had. And, like, I'm fed up with using Excel. I'm fed up with using this crappy software that just doesn't work. And, like, now there's so many options, and some are very early days, some are very well funded, and I just like learning about this. So I wanted to make a place where I can go and learn about stuff like that, just from a selfish perspective, I guess. And I'm also keen to find out, like, what other people are creating in the space. As a creator, I think it's cool that there's a place where people can share your work. So, like, a lot of people will say to me, like, do you want, like, other podcasters or content creators coming into your community and sharing stuff? Or, like, why do you share stuff of other people? And I'm like, well, if we all share each other's work, that's great, because we're getting wider audiences. And also, we all very much have different views, and if the content is created by ourselves, it will have a different spin on it to someone else, and different interview style, right? Like, your interview style might be different to mine. And, like, Philip from Art of Procurement, different style, and maybe James, who does a fantastic Procure Tech podcast.
Right. And that's a great example of, earlier in the week, I can't remember if it was this week or last week, somebody posted up one of his episodes, the Procure Tech podcast. And he is so sharp and so keen to really break down procurement technologies in a way that everyone can understand. And it was a perfect share for the community. Even though we all love your podcast, it's not, like you said, it's not just about you.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think I don't know, it's just my personal view is that when you make something about yourself, it's just for longevity, right? Like, if I make all the content I want to produce about me, like I'm the lead actor in it, it won't last. So if you make it about a community, it's like that, who can come in and they can talk and they can do what they want and feel part of it. I think that's the key part. Like, if they feel, like, empowered as part of the decision making, what can happen in the community, I think that's the key thing. Like, I think very early on I had, like, blocked all links, right? Apart from, like, for a couple of pages, and people kept trying to link stuff, and they were like, you were like, even yourself, and you're like, I can't link this, like, and you were getting almost like temporary banned. And I was like, oh wow, people, like, want to share stuff more and more. Let's just turn it on. And now it's just a free for all, right? And it's worked, but way better. I thought people were going to spam, and it would be really just awful.
See, and that's the normal fear, because people have they've been conditioned in other communities where the buyers and sellers are so separated, because sellers really do want to sell. And I think that you have set up this community with integrity. And the concept is, we are all here to thrive and help each other. This is not about anyone selling anything. This is about learning, and people with natural curiosity like you and I are going to thrive on this community.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And just two things in regards to what you just said there. Like, yeah, definitely, it's not a place where people are going to be hard pitched, even though there are more and more people coming in from sales side. And as part of that, though, I think if someone comes into there and it's like, oh, I need a product that does, I I was just talking to Deepstream
Mm-hmm.
last week, and I'm going to have them on the podcast. Like, oh, I need a very easy to use RFX piece of software that, anyone can use who doesn't have any idea how to use computers. And I could be like, well, Deepstream are here, or Deepstream themselves are in there, and they could just be like, oh, we do this. And maybe they have a conversation. I don't think there's anything bad for that. I don't need to commercialize that
Right.
myself. Like,
Right.
I and maybe I will lose out on some pennies if by not making it about myself and commercializing everything in that sense. But I'm very comfortable with that because I think longevity is better. And then in terms of, I think you said it's very good for people who are maybe naturally curious about the space and want to go and learn. And I think that that's a really cool observation because I've kind of set it up from the outset, and I don't care about numbers. We could have 10 people in this community. I just care about people coming in who want to collaborate, who want to talk, who want to share thoughts. So like we have under 200 people at the moment, and I'm really happy and I'm stoked about that. I think that's cool. Like I think there's like 130, 140 people in there right now. Nothing crazy, right, in terms of the numbers you see across social media.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, people are talking, people are collaborating, and if we can grow in the same vein as that, if we only ever get to 200, I'm really happy about that. Still.
Yeah, and I think before we jump into a little bit more about what you do outside of the community,
Yeah.
real quick, I wanted you to kind of explain the architecture of the community because there is something for everyone, right? With all the
Yeah.
different rooms.
Yeah, like effectively, like in my mind, how I see the whole supply chain pieces, we have a lot around supply chain, right? Logistics, warehousing, all that nerdy stuff that I've touched a little bit in previous roles that I want to grow more and more content on or collaboration on, and like traceability and supply chains. I thought, why can't we have people coming in and talking about that? And then we've got the whole contract management area, which is sort of my specialty. And like, how do we get better contracts and better management of contracts? And then we have the procurement area, which is indirect, direct procurement, RFX, process. And I've been kind of pleasantly surprised in that area where people are going into the RFX area or the process area. And they're kind of the areas I was least expecting people to go in and collaborate on. I think it's had some of the best collaboration in there, those two zones. And then we just got a place where people can hang out, talk about what they ate for dinner, or I don't know, Thanksgiving, recent conversations, just like a super chilled out zone where people can just talk.
So let's dig in a little bit more on contract management because part of what I want to do with this podcast is talk about something that each of the guests would consider themselves subject matter experts, right? Something in procurement, supply chain, sourcing that they do that perhaps other areas of the business may not understand fully. So just give us a little, rundown of what you do and explain it in a way that everyone can understand.
Yeah, that's always a very
Easy,
challenging question,
easy
right? And I love it,
task.
right? Yeah. No, I think it's the right question to ask. And in the simplest of terms, I work at a very fast-growing fintech company that makes software for legacy banks and makes it amazing. They can set up banks in seconds. So I think you know, our key suppliers are a lot of tech companies, a lot of software providers. So that's always challenging in the space. But what, in essence, my role is I review contracts with those suppliers and I say if these contracts are good or bad. And if they're bad, I go back to those suppliers, negotiate them. And that's all the pre-contract stuff. And we do that until we get a contract signature perspective. So we've got the contract signed. And then, if I'm being honest, there's not too much after that just yet in my current role. But what we're looking to do is then what happens after the contract signed? How do we know that that contract's being delivered properly? And we've just implemented a new bit of tech. It's by Gatekeeper. It's a contract lifecycle management tool that allows us to do all the relationship stuff. It allows us to do the risk management of all of these suppliers. And I'm having a big part in that. So I'm managing the CLM implementation and life of that. And it's just kind of cool, right? Like I get to do a bit of tech, a bit of contract reviews. Like I pretend to be a lawyer. That's kind of what I say to people. I'm a pretend
Well,
lawyer
but
at the
you do
moment.
have your JD, right?
Yeah. So from a UK perspective, so I've got 2 degrees in law,
Yeah.
undergrad and masters, and I may be looking to actually qualify as a solicitor in the UK, which is
Oh, okay. So that would
so
be
lawyer
the
as well.
equivalent to the JD, right? Juris Doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're getting there with all of that. But yeah, that's and I don't know how simple I made it there, but yeah, I look at contracts and say if they're good or
Okay.
bad. In short.
So who are the most important stakeholders that
Hmm.
within your business that ensure a successful contract?
Yeah, that's a really good question and something
Is
that
it
I've
everyone?
actually just been it almost it's almost everyone, right? So if we look at it from a procurement perspective, there's normally someone who requests to buy something. So straight away, that person who wants this new service or new equipment within the business, they're definitely a key stakeholder. We need to make sure that the contract reflects what they are wanting to buy. And yes, there may be a whole RFX process of some sort that you would hope has led us to the right direction. But normally there's a disconnect with sellers in that they promise you the world, and then in the contract document, they take the world away from you very quickly. So that's the first thing to be mindful of. And then when you come to reviewing a contract, uh, and obviously I've highlighted I'm not legally qualified, but I am a contract management professional in that sense. So I do have legal stakeholders. I have the general counsel within the business who
Mm-hmm.
trust me to do things. So that's a key stakeholder there to make sure that that trust is kept. But there's other teams, right? Data protection, so data protection officers. That's a key one in the UK and the EU at the moment. The transfers of data from the UK to European outside of European Union, so to the US, for example, is a big it's almost a big no-no actually at the moment. Then we've got information security teams, we've got just physical security teams, we've got facilities teams if people are
Sure.
coming on site. So suddenly when you're reviewing a contract, you're not just reviewing it from a commercial sense. You've got to review it in the sense that what do each of these people need in the business? How do we get it into a contract? And how do we make sure every single contract is consistent in what we achieve so that we get the end result we need.
And
That's kind of how I would summarize that.
how do you do
Yeah.
that? Like what for like
Yeah.
for instance, facilities management, how do you get to that place where you
Yeah.
feel comfortable knowing that that you can deliver the the contract that will give them exactly what they need or
Yeah,
close
it's a really
to,
good
right?
question. Yeah, no, I can kind of talk to two very effective methods. And the first one, and it's something that I've seen elsewhere used, but we do it in my current role extremely well. And we have a contract playbook. So it's a playbook that is built up of different conditions that say, we need to do this in this contract for these type of contracts or these type of segmented suppliers, depending on their segmentation or the complexity of the contract. So we might need to get this set limit of liability to protect us from clients or protect us if there is a loss. We may need, if suppliers are bringing people on site, well, maybe we need to make sure that they are properly vetted because they might see stuff when they're in the office. So I think that's a really key one. We have this massive playbook. I say massive, it makes it sound like it's a really onerous task, but it's very all encompassing. And that's built up of multiple stakeholders who have had an input over the years, and it gets refined over time so that if we do miss something, and there's a possibility that during a contract review we might miss something. If it's not in that playbook, we could miss it, right? And that is almost a flaw there. But 99% of the time we accommodate for everyone by following the playbook, making sure that the terms reflect what's in that playbook. And if they don't, well, then we have approval routes. So the approvals don't just sit within sort of that legal function. They go out to different people in the business. So they might go to the infosec team if we're a little bit unsure about a clause, and we can explain this is in practice. This means that this supplier isn't going to be certified, or their certification is limited, or if there's a breach, a security breach, then we don't have a right to claim for it. And it's all of these conversations that start to stimulate that cohesion from a review perspective. So that's kind of a very effective way. And then I said there was two, and I'd say the other method is that also as part of that request process. So if someone raises a new request, well, it's very good to have some sort of form, whether that's a basic like Google form or it's built into your CLM or
Sure.
your procurement software. And I think if you do those gating questions, right, that if your say your facilities management team need to know if people are going to be coming on site, well, that's a good question to ask up front. Like, does the supplier need to have people on our site? And then we can start to build up, what we need to do for those people. And that kind of sits outside of my, I guess, like from a legal perspective, but as part of the pre-contract stuff, that's vital.
That's all great. Getting your perspective as a contract management professional and understanding that you use a playbook for your process that sounds like it goes through continuous improvement and feedback. So you're asking for feedback as you go, which is open communication and improves outcomes as you go, right? So like maybe that 1% comes up and now you've got a remedy for the next time around. And that's incredible. So listeners, get yourselves a contract management playbook, whether that is through Google Forms, whether it's through your CLM, whatever you're doing, get something set up so that you can standardize the process, set expectations, and basically
that's a key word, by the way.
Yeah, and invite the feedback too.
Yeah, like yeah, and that's where I think this works so well in that. And I can talk a little bit more about the whole playbook model for just from a procurement perspective. But if we think about it, if you're reviewing contracts, which are effectively that's the end goal for procurement. What are you buying? You're buying stuff, but how is that all formed? It's in a contractual document that says what both parties are going to do. That's the key part. So if you can review those contracts in a standardized approach every single time within your business, you'll get good results. And I'm not saying that the supplier is always going to agree with everything that you ask of them. But at least if you're asking those questions, you're doing things in the same way. It means anyone can come in and do things. And it might sound a little bit mechanical and a little bit robotic. And it kind of is at times. But I think the difference is a good contract management person who understands procurement and supply chain won't be a robot reviewing that. They will consider other elements as well. But a standardized approach is, it's just incredibly powerful. And I think as part of your whole RFX exercise, if you're going out to buy stuff with a supplier, well, why can't you have a little document that says we need these things in our contract? This is the end game for our contract. Share that with the supplier at the start. If you need to be able to terminate the contract, 6 months in, let them know up front. If you need to, or at least have the option to, right? That's what I mean by that.
Full transparency in the RFX. It's key. It doesn't seem like it's a tough concept, but from what I've heard, it's not common.
I don't get it, right? Because what happens is, and this is a really good point about your whole stakeholder approach. You can talk the talk to your stakeholders. You can put that RFX out. You can go out there, and if you don't give all that information up front, if you don't let the suppliers in on what you're trying to achieve, it normally means the bids that come back aren't so good. That means you then have to go to your internal stakeholders and say, sorry, these suppliers haven't performed or haven't done a good job. But really, it's on you. And that's a whole breakdown of trust there, because your stakeholders think, why did I come to you to do this? I could just do it myself.
So many man hours and so much time, so much money wasted in that process. Just be transparent up front. There's like this whole power play and control issue sometimes that has to be
so weird.
You guys, everyone, we need to work together. That's what we're here to talk about. Okay, one last thing. So we kind of we went a little deep in contract management. We talked about ways that both sides can improve. Give me your elevator pitch on the value of what you do to your stakeholders so that they can understand why they should take a moment the next time they've got a contract that they've got to get figured out. What is your value prop? Go.
Oh yeah, that's a really good one. Just to completely get me there. No, I
Sorry.
think there's a couple of things, right? For one, like that you need to read a contract because contracts stitch you up all the time. No matter what anyone says, contracts are not drafted to be nice by a lot of businesses, and this is a key problem, right? And there's no standard contract really at the moment for any type of service. So when you're buying software, that software company is going to stitch you up. They are going to tell you, in the sales process, they are, yeah, if something goes wrong, we'll fix it. And then you read the contract and it says like, oh, after 7 days, you have no warranty, which means you have no rights whatsoever. So if the software stops working, you're tied in for a whole year or 3 years, and we're not going to fix it, or we don't need to fix it. And to me, that's crazy, right? And we can avoid that just by reviewing the contract,
Sure.
negotiating that contract, and making sure that goes away. So people, they buy stuff, they want to use it how they intend to use it. The sales teams tell them how they can use it. The contract says another thing, but we make sure that those people can, do whatever they want with the software or the equipment that they're buying, and it's reflected in the contract.
So keeping sellers honest and making sure that buyers are aware.
Yeah, and the buyers don't even have to worry, right? Like if it breaks, they know it's going to get fixed. If it's there's an error with something, they know they can call up and get some support. It just means that it's a burden that they don't have to worry about. I think that's the key thing, right?
Have somebody worry for you. That's how we can boil this down. You don't have to worry. Hand it over to Daniel. He will review it and make sure that you are getting what you were promised.
That's it. That's the most basic premise there is the contract makes sure you get what you were promised. That's it. So easy.
Okay, so next time, sales department, marketing department, legal, ops, whoever it is, ask yourself, do you want what you were promised? If the answer is yes, loop in your contract manager or whoever it is in procurement, finance, whoever it is, because it's a little different with the size of each company. Loop them in and secure your contract the way it should be.
And I kind of hope right, if procurement are doing a good job, and you may only have one procurement person and one contract person in your business, but if procurement have set out the message correctly that they're there to work with you, the procurement person should already be involved at this stage when there's a contract on the table to review or to read or to sign. They should be doing all this hard work as well, right? Like if we're talking about the ideal situation, the stakeholders in the business should be, they should be oblivious almost. They should just know that this is going on in the background, and that's the best situation you can get to.
Yes, seemingly effortless. Yeah, the all the work is happening under the surface, and the stakeholder it should feel seamless to them.
Yeah,
in a perfect world, right?
And I just think more procurement people need to strive for that. I just don't see enough of that care or attention to detail with how they do their work. I think it can be a little bit sloppy at times. If I'm being honest.
I'm an optimist. I think we're going to get there. I think that what you're doing with your community is going to help people get there. And by the way, let our listeners know how they can get to your Discord community.
Yeah, that's a very good question as well. So they can go to worldofprocurement.co.uk, and on the homepage, just click join. I think it says join Discord server. I don't even know what's on my own website, but there's something like that. And it will instantly, you don't have to put your email address in to sign up. Or maybe you do, I can't remember, but I will change it if it is that case. But it should just take you straight to the Discord channel. And if you don't have a Discord account, just make one. It takes 2 seconds. Log in with your Apple ID or whatever. Just log in and then go in. Add a profile picture of, I don't know. I mean, I have a pug as mine from an NFT I own. So like, do what you want. Choose whatever name you want and go in there and talk.
Okay, and if somebody wants to connect with you on social, tell me about your top platforms that you're engaging with.
Oh, that's a really good question at the moment. So I've literally dropped every platform apart from, and I'm going to say it, Twitter at the moment.
Yeah.
But like I'm just on Twitter at the moment, just sapping up all the knowledge about Web 3.0, the crypto world, NFT worlds, and community, because that's effectively Web 3.0. It's about community. But I think for my still probably my number one site is LinkedIn. I've gone a little bit quiet, and I do this every year. I go a little bit quieter up to Christmas because I think it's a really good time to ease off all this stuff, recharge, think about next year, what you want to do. But yeah, I'd say LinkedIn is still probably the best place to get me. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so listeners, if you want to get linked up to Daniel Barnes, which I highly suggest, because not only does he have the community for World of Procurement, he has a really great blog. You have a podcast. You're creating fire memes every week.
Oh, those memes are so good.
Yeah.
I haven't done that for like a week or so now. I miss doing it. So yeah, they've been going insane. Like I don't know, one over 100,000 views blew my mind, to be honest.
Everybody, come find Daniel Barnes. Join us in the community. We would love to chat and learn about you, learn about what you do, learn from you. And that's it. This has been such a great chat, Daniel. I am so honored to have you as my first guest on Procurement for People.
No, I'm honored. This has been awesome. No, I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, until next time, I think I wanted to have time to get a little bit deeper with you on smart contracts, but maybe that'll be for next time. All right, friends. Well, thanks for listening today. I hope Daniel's perspective was helpful and you feel better equipped to take on the many contracts I know you'll be working with this year. And guess what? Since this recording, Daniel's actually recently published his own contract playbook over on the World of Procurement blog. So look for a link to that in this episode summary on the podcast page for Art of Procurement. And if you enjoyed this conversation, stay tuned for the next one coming up with Jill Robbins. She's going to give us a mini masterclass on bridging gaps between procurement and sales. You cannot miss it. Till next time, remember this: procurement is for all the people.